As promised, today's video is going to be on Tyler Smith of the G League Ignite. What's up everybody, it's JJ Buckets. The usual drill before I fully get into things you already know. Like the video, helps the algorithm out a ton. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Plus, if you plan on doing any responsible sports betting in the near future, just make sure to check out my link in the description below. As usual, let's start with the pros. And if you are somebody that loves modern bigs and kind of just the modernization of the game, I can understand why it is very easy to fall in love with Tyler Smith and his game. So for Smith, the standout skill I think that's going to jump off the charts immediately for you is naturally going to be his three-point shooting, right? Like he is a very good three-point shooter. Not even just a three-point shooter, but just he can get it done in the mid-range too, which I think is really cool. In general, he's a good shooter, but I think the three-point skill is the one that stands out the most. Like he's a great catch and shoot option from three. He's got a very consistent release. I would say consistent is definitely the word that I'm looking for there. And it is fluid, and obviously he's knocking it down at a good percentage. His shooting ability is a immediate standout for anybody that's looking at him and envisioning him in the offense. Like the capabilities that he will have to stretch the court will be fantastic, especially when you consider that he's doing this in the G League. So he's already doing this with the NBA three-point line, which has got to be encouraging to anybody that's watching him play, right? So I think there's a lot to really enjoy about his shooting package there. I think in general, he's just got really good size and really good athleticism for, especially again, what you envision of just the modern big man. And he moves really well on the basketball court, considering that he's like what, 6'11"? He moves like somebody that's a lot smaller than that, which is very encouraging. Like it's very easy to imagine Smith as a very good offensive role player, you know, coming off your bench with the tools and the skill set that I just described. And on top of that, I think another reason why it's quite easy to imagine him being a big pro offensively, and this is a huge testament to him, considering I think young players can sometimes struggle with this. I feel like he has quite impressive off-ball instincts. I think he's got a good knack for knowing when to cut, he almost looks like a wing in that regard sometimes. And I think that's really gonna lend itself well. Obviously at the NBA level, especially as a rookie, he's not really gonna get the chance to self-create, and nor should he, quite frankly. I'll get to that a little bit later, but he has good instincts for cutting to the basket, being in the right spot at the right time to be a play finisher, which I think is very encouraging. He's also got good instincts for spacing out and knowing when to put himself into those opportunities for the catch and shoot threes that he's very good and effective at knocking down. I think the combo of the package of like the things I've described and the other stuff that goes into it with him, there's more positives I could talk about, but generally I keep these sections to like three main standout things. Those are the ones that jump out to me. And when looking at those things for Tyler Smith, you can really picture this guy just being an offensive weapon off your bench. And especially if you're the Raptors who are looking for a backup big, he could be an interesting fit there, especially paired with Kelly Olynyk. Moving on to the weaknesses, there was a little bit of a hint dropped as to what one of them was going to be in the previous section, and I'll talk about it here. He's still admittedly quite raw. There's some stuff, you know, like the off-ball instincts, I think that jump off quite well for you, and I think he has a chance to be, you know, maybe not an immediate impact player, but you know, went pretty quickly into his career because of like those off-ball instincts, and I think he's going to have a chance to be a really good play finisher early on in his career. But in terms of self-creation, any of that stuff, like it's quite lacking. He's quite raw in that regard. There's moments where you see tidbits of it, and overall, I think idealistically you're not really asking him to do those things, but when put into those positions, he's just not your guy, at the very least yet. He's going to need time to really work on that, and he's again just unpolished in that regard. Like there's a lot of stuff offensive that stands out for you, but the ability to create for himself, especially at the NBA level, I think is going to be something that will need to be developed over time. If not, I think he's okay, you know, just operating as a play finisher. I think that's fine if he's never going to necessarily develop any strong self-creation ability. Again, it's fine, but just right now in particular, you look at his offensive game, that's definitely one of the things that stands out to you that you're like, yeah, that needs work. Another thing that I think immediately stands out, especially in terms of being a little raw, a little unpolished, is the defensive IQ. Simply put, it needs to be better. It needs to be a lot better. There's too many times where it feels like he kind of gets lost defensively, whether it be, as an off-ball player, he's kind of away from the ball, like a screen will throw him out of place or something, and he'll just never really recover on that play. There is definitely a need and a concern that this is kind of happening to him, and it maybe puts into question how reliably you can trust him when you're bringing him off the bench. Like if he's gonna be able to withstand some of the movement of other offenses, and whether or not he's gonna get played off the court just because he's leaving these consistent gaps open on your defense. I really think the defensive IQ does need to improve quite significantly for him. It's gonna be a difference maker, quite frankly, of whether or not he's getting consistent minutes on the floor early in his career. So you'd like to see improvements in that. And the last thing that I will say stands out here as something that needs improvement is, well, his rebounding. He's not an impressive rebounder, and you can argue that's because, he's more of like a slender build and, focused on mobility and stuff like that. And the rebounding numbers, to an extent, kind of reflect that rebounding isn't really necessarily his strength or strong suit. And I do think if he wants to thrive at the next level, being, potentially like kind of like a combo 4-5, like that rebounding is going to need to get better, whether or not that's him filling out his frame and adding a little bit more muscle and size, as long as that doesn't jeopardize his mobility. And some of the things that make him special on the other end of the basketball court, being like offensively, his rebounding will need to be improved. That could be a way of improving it. Maybe it's just an intensity thing, quite frankly, if you want to talk about intangibles. But just as a rebounder, he's quite lacking. And if you're the Raptors, who would theoretically be rolling him out as like a backup 4, that's not really necessarily the most trustworthy rebounding presence to have. Or sorry, I said backup 4, I meant backup 5. You know what I mean? Quite frankly, in either one of those spots, like, he's not really a good rebounder, and I think, especially if you're the Raptors, you would probably need him to be to some extent, so you'd like to see that aspect of his game improve. And that does it for today's video. What do you folks think? I really do believe there is a lot to like about Tyler Smith, but I think if the Raptors are going to be picking up this 19-year-old, they should be prepared to maybe, bring him along a little slowly, not throw him into the lion's den immediately and into like considerable minutes off the bench. Maybe take a bit of a Grady Dick approach where you kind of bring him along at the G League, or at the very least, just fix up the things that need fixing up, because there is definitely a legitimate future where you can envision this guy at the very least as a very quality and sound role player. But the things that need fixing with Tyler Smith's game definitely need fixing with Tyler Smith's game. That does it for me, folks. Drop your thoughts below on what you think about Smith as a prospect. If there's any other prospects you specifically want me to take a look at, the drill. Also drop that into the comments section. There's only so many weeks left until the NBA draft. Like, I was writing about it for GMS the other day that, hey, we are like under a month until the draft, and I think that's personally crazy. Like, it never gets lost on me, the passage of time and like how quick it feels. Other than that, usual drill at the end of the videos. If you're still watching this, first of all, thank you. Second of all, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, all that good stuff. It really does help me out a ton, so thank you. Yeah, it's been JJ Buckets. It's been a pleasure, and I will see everybody next time.